Hey, John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com. Today, the video is not a question, kind of just an observation that I've made. So everyone sort of kind of has this idea that someday that they're going to be rich or they're going to be a rock star. And I've kind of noticed this mentality that a lot of people have. And I think it's really a mentality that prevents you from actually going out and doing things that are going to actually lead you down the path of becoming rich or a rock star. So let me talk a little bit more about what I mean by this. So, and maybe you suffer from this as well, because I found that a lot of people kind of subconsciously have this mentality. They think what this is thinking that someday in the future, I'll have a mansion. Or, they think someday in the future, I'll be famous or I'll be rich or whatever it is, right? And they live their life that way. And you can think of it this way, as if you ever see something like, a movie where someone's rich or famous or whatever, and you think about how you just assume that someday you're going to reach that, right? And that and you never assume that won't happen to you, right? Because most people really do honestly think this. Like if you have to do some digging to figure this out, but it's apparent in the way that you live your life. Because people just assume that good things are going to happen to them very often, and maybe you're guilty of this. I know I was at some point, and once I started to kind of figure this out and start taking action, it changed things around for me. But a lot of times you might just feel like, it's kind of hard to describe, but this idea that these things are, that things are just going to happen, that things are just going to go your way eventually, and it's so far off, right, that you don't even see the path for getting there. So you just think that, okay, well, maybe someday, like if you're young in your 20s, you think, well, when I'm 40 or 50, I'll make it, or I'll do this thing, or I'll be super successful. But it's actually a very dangerous belief, because it limits you from actually accomplishing the thing. Because if you believe that you're going to get there anyway, it's kind of like that the tortoise and the hare, right? So you think about that Aesop fable, right? The hare is so confident. He's like, yeah, I'm going to win the race. I'm super fast. And so he goes and he runs and he takes a break, right? And he's not trying his hardest, because he just assumes he'll eventually get there. And that's how I feel that a lot of people think of life, is they think, well, someday I'm going to be a rock star. Someday I'm going to be famous. Someday I'm going to be rich. Someday, this is going to happen. Even maybe not even so grand dreams. A lot of people are just like in complete disillusionment about their own retirement. They think that someday their 401k is going to be magically, is going to be able to sustain them, when there's no signs that show that it ever will. And that can happen with your career, right? You might think, oh, someday I'll be the architect or the CEO of the company, or I'll be an executive. But you're not going to, just by having that thought. You actually have to take action and do things. So my advice to you would be to think about this and see if you have this kind of fallacy, right? Because again, it's probably subconscious. I think most people really just think that someday everything's going to work out for them, and even in relationships, right? People think this as well. They're like, oh, someday I'll find this perfect person for me, or my soulmate, and they don't actually ever take action in any of these things, because they just assume it's going to work out. The reality of the situation is, like, people that do become rich and famous and successful and executives and CEOs of Pepsi or whatever it is, right? What they do is they bust their butt. They work really hard. They have a dream, they have a vision, but they have a plan to get there. And so, if you just assume that something is going to come, that's going to fall in your lap, you don't make a plan. Just like the hare who didn't, have a game plan for his race, he just assumed he's going to win, then he doesn't try very hard. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't put that in place. So I'd encourage you, if you feel like you're in that place, to just take a moment and think about reality, and think about how that's not going to automatically happen. You're not automatically going to become a celebrity someday. You're not automatically going to become rich someday, and maybe that'll scare you. And then you can think about, what is your plan? Like, how could you get to where you want to get, and come up with an actual plan and start taking action today? So I think, again, a lot of people, the reason why they don't take action, the reason why their lives just go on and they never actually accomplish anything is because of this, because they just assume that someday, so far off that you can't even imagine it, that you don't have to really bring reality into it, they're going to achieve some kind of ridiculous goal or dream that they're not even setting out to do. So don't be that kind of person. Be the kind of person that actually sets goals and realistic goals and does action to achieve them. And you're going to be a lot happier and successful in life. And you won't be, later on in your life wondering, where your youth went and what the dreams that you never accomplished, because you just assumed that they're gonna fall in your lap. So anyway, that's my advice for today. Hopefully it's helpful to you. And if you have a question for me, you can email me at john@simpleprogrammer.com. I'm happy to do a video. And as always, subscribe to the channel. Take care.